Hello and welcome to this guide about science infrastructure. So we'll talk about what sort of general overview of the kinds of science infrastructure that is available in Humankind. And then we'll talk about whether each of the science infrastructure that are available in each of the eras is actually worth building in that particular era. So first, sort of giving a bit of an overview of science infrastructure in Humankind. It gives a bunch of different bonuses, such as additional researchers, science per researcher, bonuses to the research quarter base yield, as well as the adjacency bonus, science based on the number of population that you have in your city, and it also gives percentage-based bonuses. Some of it also adds pollution to makers quarter, so you have to be a bit careful with those. Now, let's take a look at the infrastructure that's available in each of the eras. The House of Scribes in the ancient era is quite good because most of the science that you get in the ancient era will actually come from researchers, and you're kind of limited by the number of researchers slots that you have available, and getting additional science per researcher is also quite good. This is really good together with the Harappans, which grow a lot of population in their city because of their food bonuses. Now, in the classical era, the library is pretty good, especially if you have large cities. But the sort of hands down best infrastructure in the game, and there are different instances of this throughout the eras, is the infrastructure like the school, which gives science on research quarters per adjacent research quarter, as well as just base yields. So this school is just about always worth building if you have any number of research quarters, maybe at least sort of 5 research quarters in a given city, but any less than 5, it's not really worth building research quarters in that city anyway. Now, moving on to the medieval era here, let me scroll that down a little bit more. The Alchemists Workshop here gives a percentage-based bonus, which is quite good because it's nice in the medieval era, and then it also scales really well with all the other percentage-based bonuses that are available. This starts to be pretty weak here. Most of your science is going to be coming from research quarters at this point, so the manuscript atelier is generally not worth building. It's also quite expensive actually to build. Alright, moving on to the early modern era. The Cabinet of Curiosities is okay, but at this point the science per population is generally not really worth it anymore, because you're probably at thousands of research at this point, so an additional 20 or 30 science per city isn't going to do a lot. The Inventors Workshop is of course worth it, especially because of the plus 2% per whatever that strategic resource is. This can get up to like 20% or so, so it scales very nicely. Printing House, again, not really worth it because you're not going to get most of your science from research anymore. So this is marginal. It depends, it's situational, and even in most situations it's marginal. I've never found that it's particularly good. But then the university is really, really good because of that science on research quarters as well as the adjacency bonus there. Now, moving on to the industrial era, the academy is probably the best piece of science infrastructure in the game. So you will want to build this in cities that have at least some research quarters. If you don't have any, there's no point, but anyway. Alright, moving on to the contemporary era. The museum is not worth it. At this point, the science per population, even if you have 100 population, will just disappear in all of the science that you're getting. The supercomputer labs is good, but you have to be really careful with the pollution on Maker's Quarter. And usually by the time you unlock this, you really don't need very much more science, and you're not going to be limited in a game by the amount of science that you actually have. And an additional 10% bonus is probably not worth it, the stability cost of the pollution on Maker's Quarter. So I would tend not to build this. And again, the tech park is terrible because it doesn't help you very much with your overall science. Like researchers at this point are pretty weak, and it adds pollution to Maker's Quarter. Now, if you have focused your cities to have very few Maker's Quarters but a lot of research quarters, the supercomputer lab is actually quite good. But good luck building a lot of this supercomputer lab with this industry cost unless you have at least some Maker's Quarters. In your capital, sometimes you can get away with it, like having only 10 or so Maker's Quarters, but usually you have to have a decent number of Maker's Quarters to be able to build anything at this point in the game. So there you have it. All the infrastructure that boosts the research quarters is just as always worth it to build, especially in cities that have at least sort of 5 research quarters in them. The percentage-based bonuses infrastructure is also really good to build. The early game adding more researchers and science per researcher is really good, but it falls off in terms of how good it is towards the end of the game. And the same is for the science per population here. It's really good around this era, but I wouldn't worry about it later on. So thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.